talk not about business, because I understand that we are here to understand how can we all move one step forward. So I'm going to maybe just take a step back and say, what is actually driving, this absolutely tsunami of entrepreneurship, not just in India, but across the globe. What is allowing all of us to make these choices, which are so dramatically different from all our predecessors? If I look back to at least 5-6 generations, the life choices that they were making, what has changed that we are here today? I think there are two primary things that are happening. One, there is no scarcity of resources. So we have finally, I look at it saying, maybe it was just all of us pushing that huge boulder up a mountain, and you have reached a place today where there is this perfect storm, where there is no scarcity, and we are all living in the age of abundance, true abundance. Right? Once that happens, what happens after that is that each one of us is truly living in the age of choice. A choice to become who we want to be without any shackles. So what has changed? Now let's just look at saying a couple of 5, 6 things on saying what has truly changed when we say that we are in the age of abundance and the lack of scarcity. The first question that has completely disappeared is, who are you? So when I'm talking of maybe when I was growing up, or even when my mother was growing up, when my father was growing up, we were always asked a question on saying, which gender are you? Where do you come from? Who's your family? What's your background? Do you know enough? All kinds, your social structure, are you the youngest kid? Are you the eldest kid? All those social structures today have disappeared. Maybe some of you are feeling it already. Some of you are maybe feeling it at some distance. But it has happened already. No more questions around who are you. The second, where do you come from? When I was growing up, which city you came from, which region of the country, which school you came from, did you know English well enough? Yeah. Language, region, religion, caste, everything has dropped. It is up to us to say these things don't matter anymore, because they truly don't. The third, how much money do you have? Now this actually is one of the critical changes that we see, from the industry on why is there this spate of entrepreneurship. If you look at, say, a couple of generations back, you could only start a business if your father had the money or your uncle had the money. Today that's no longer the case. You stand out there and say, I have this idea, I have this vision, and I can go ahead and do whatever I want. Money is no longer a constraint. Now I just want to put, one caveat here. It is not about saying that there is, infinite availability of money. It is about saying each one of us can decide to live how much money we want in the entire spectrum. And today, you have the ability to fashion your life around that money. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying each one of us has to become a billionaire. You can decide to stay with a couple of thousand of rupees, but you still know how to live a good life. So it's an entire spectrum. So money today is no longer a constraint. Do you know enough information? So what is one of the key things that has happened? Today, you don't need to know the answers. You need to be able to ask the right questions. And if you look long enough and hard enough, you can become whoever you want. So I say this again and again to my team, whoever I meet, is that never tell yourself that this is not my skill set, or this is not somebody I can become. You can become a space scientist. Each one of us can. We just need to be able to look long, hard, and be able to work long enough. Who do you know? So I know that this is a question that we were growing up with. If you had the contacts, if you had access, you could get things done much faster. Today, if you look, anybody across the globe is maybe 4 or 6 relationships away. It's about you saying, do you want to go out there and actually crack that code? So, all of us are living the age of choice, and we can truly become who we want. Having said that, some rules, some universal rules still apply, which if you see in earlier times was a construct that was being put together by society, by our families, by religion, and those things still apply. You have to take full responsibility for yourself. This is not about a reckless going out there saying, I have choice, I will do whatever I want to. Sure, you can, but you have to take full responsibility for the outcome. Not today, 3 months, 6 months, 6 years, 6 decades later. You have to take, so if you take the choice, you have to take the responsibility. You cannot do this by harming someone else. So, I will just take a word out of our Sanskrit texts. It's called ahimsa. What does the term ahimsa mean? It means you cannot harm somebody else to be what you want to be. And the third is you cannot restrict somebody else's choice to become what they want. If you will keep these 3 rules in mind, you can go ahead and say, I'm in the age of choice and I can do whatever I want. Yeah? Now, I just try to put together a 4-block framework on how each one of us can actually achieve what we want to do. Yeah? And it's going to be a function of very focused effort on saying, okay, here are 4 things that I'm going to either do or not do. The first one, and this is actually the most critical, it's the narrative. So what is the narrative? Each one of us has a narrative about who we are, what this world is about, and what is our place in it. And we operate from there every second of our lives. So if you look at this room and what is happening, and I think there are about 200-300 of us here, each one of us will have a different version of truth of what this room is actually about. If there are 7.5 billion of us on this planet, there are 7.5 billion versions of truth. So which means that what is the narrative in your head is just that. It's a story. It's a story you're telling yourself on a continuous basis. Now, if you really want to live that age of choice and take that opportunity that you have, what you have to do is first step back and look at it in the face and say, this is not the absolute truth. This is a story. The good thing is that the mind looks at this narrative as a map. As human beings, we have this unique ability, other than any other species on this planet, to be able to actually have a map in our head and say, this is where we are going, and this is where we're going to go on from here. Right? But the fun part of that is that you can change that map. All of us can keep changing the map to decide where we want to go. And how do you do that? You actually look at that map as a jigsaw puzzle. Imagine there is a jigsaw puzzle which actually defines who you are, what you think the world is, and where your place is. Now you can actually define and redefine each of those jigsaw puzzles basis on the inputs that you get in this world. And you can keep changing that narrative, right? How do you keep changing the input? It is primarily what are you ingesting from the environment on a day in, day out basis. So I'm going to use another term that that is there in our Sanskrit and traditional texts. It's a term called satsang. Now in recent terms, Satsang has a connotation, which is a religious congregation. It is not a religious congregation. If you just translate it, it is good company. And what is good company? It's not just people. It's what are you reading on a day-to-day basis? What are you watching? What music are you listening to? Of course, what people are you around? And you have to constantly go out there and say, is this experience, is this input, are these 5 minutes that I spent on social media giving me the right input for me to refine and hone my narrative to who I want to become? It's hard work. But that is what is going to get you to be able to lead the life that you want of your choice. Now, very related to this and very, very critical is bandwidth. So, I started out by saying we are in the age of abundance and there is no scarcity. I was wrong. There is one resource which is truly scarce and will continue to remain. It's your own personal bandwidth. Become super stingy about it. Be very, very careful on how you spend your 24 hours. So your 24 hours are your most precious resource from here on. And that will define who you become. So each one of us, at a minimum, have at least 1,000 different ways in which we can spend our 24 hours. The bad news is you can only do anywhere between 4 to 7 of them to be truly effective. So now what you need to do, and I would urge all of you to do that when you go back, put a list out and say, how am I spending my 24 hours? And become ruthless and cutting out stuff. And saying, no, these are the only 4 or 6 things that I will actually do. Otherwise, no. And you will start seeing a change because your mind will start looking at those 4 to 6 things that you do on a day-to-day basis and start building the map in their head, and that is how you're going to become CEO. Now the first 2 are active things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis. I'll use another word here, tapasya. That's the way that you do tapasya. What am I going to do to become who I want? However, none of us are living in a vacuum, which means that on a continuous basis, life will keep throwing challenges at you. There will be things that will happen to you that you really like. There are things that will happen that you don't like. There are things that people will come and say stuff to you. How do you tackle that so that you're not wavering from what you're trying to do on a daily basis? So the third block is neutrality. Can you actually train your mind to reach a place where you're neither too happy and nor too sad? And how do you start by doing that? You start by becoming not too happy. So all of us think that it is, life is about tackling when things go bad. No, life is also tackling when things are going really well. So try and tell yourself that, oh, something happens really well, right? If your normal reaction is a 10, on a scale of 10 is 10, can you take it down to 5? You say, yeah, it's good, it's fine, but it's life. So the next time when something happens which is minus 10, you can again bring it down to 5. And it's a continuous exercise that you keep doing where your range of emotions keep coming down here. And this will allow you to operate in life irrespective of what is happening outside. And a fourth one, and I think it's a related thing. We've all heard of IQ, EQ, and I think these are very external, like the other speaker was saying, American terms. There is a much stronger term that you need to build. It's the adversity quotient. Which means, what do you do when your life is not going the way you want? Right? So, I came out with a thing on saying neutrality, but on a day-to-day basis, There are two other tools that you can apply, and I think I'm reaching at the end of my time, so I'm just going to spend 30 seconds on each one. Both very, very, it's a craft that you build actually. The first one is don't take yourself too seriously. Watch this as a game. Now all of us, I don't know about, I was like, a huge fan of Candy Crush at one point. How about just playing your life as a Candy Crush game? Doesn't matter, whatever is happening, let it happen. All your job is to, go to a certain level. You don't do well, come back. Nothing is changing dramatically. So play the game of life for just what it is. It's a game. And the second one, which actually is my favorite trick, is actually watching it like a movie. So have you noticed that you can watch a Netflix series and any kind of gore and murder and whatever, all catastrophe is happening, you don't get affected because you're saying, oh, it's not happening to me, it's happening to you on the screen. Why are you telling your mind when something happens to you first person that no, this is more serious? Reverse that narrative in your head to say, even if something is happening to you, it is just a movie. So I can still remain in that neutral zone and be able to operate without these external things affecting. So to conclude, what are you doing with this opportunity? You are here truly in the age of abundance and in the age of choice. What are you doing to be able to craft your life just the way you do? Thank you.